live.
And we are live.
Welcome back to Spoken Openness. This is episode 19.
19.
And I think the general consensus was we were just going to pick up off the floor.
Pick up off from?
Where we left off. We were talking about discipline.
Yeah.
And let's just get right into it if you're feeling it.
Let's do it. Just ride the wave.
So, ride the wave.
So what is discipline, though? Because
discipline.
I remember we were
Definitions is
saying
important.
that definitions matter, and so in order for any sort of meaningful conversation to take off, should we start by trying to come up with some simple concept definition?
Do you think that in this experiment, should we look it up, or should we try to formulate our own understandings as they currently stand based on how we feel about it?
Maybe both. Maybe
both.
Do that first and then compare with what a popular dictionary is currently saying.
Sure.
Nice.
Do you want to go first?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
What's discipline?
What's discipline? Discipline is, well, is it man-made? Is it a discovery? Is it something natural, organic, and inherent to the human condition? Or is it an idea that we can adopt and we can pursue and try to implement?
Well, I think that, the idea
I was going to try to define it, and then I just came up with questions. And
I think that productivity and just having a large output is not a human. I mean, you can think of many animals that are hyper productive. They generate so many different kinds of things. They collect so many different kinds of things. They build infrastructure. They make housing. They hunt food. They very active in their life. But I guess what differentiates maybe, and this might go to the definition, and now possibly we're defining it collectively, but that something that may separate that activity to human activity is an idea that discipline is an ability to use will to generate productivity in a directed way. So it's like
it is an ability.
It's an ability. It's an ability. It is kind of an ability. It's something that you are able to do. Discipline is something that you have to. So I'm thinking, in order to differentiate, I'm thinking that animals, and this is an assumption based on our observation of animals, but it seems like they are very naturally embedded in their own dharma, in their own activity, in their own actions are not necessarily hypothesized and are pros and cons and hyper intellectualized. Things are. That's not to say that there's no pros and cons going on within sort of the subconscious or within the evolutionary
animal. Just going through the process.
But it's not. Yeah, it's in flow. It's full flow. The animal is in flow, reacting to senses, and its body is generating. Is generating the thoughts and driving behavior in a lot of ways. But so I would say that discipline is something that humans can do, is something that humans can utilize to enforce a behavioral operation or to enforce a mode of being that will take effort. I think discipline implies that it will take will and effort to execute.
I think so too.
And often with a goal in mind. Discipline is usually can you be disciplined with no outcome or with no
or with no
purpose.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to point it at something.
But I'm asking, is that possible? Can we
I
think
don't
of a
think so.
scenario where you can be disciplined?
I think in order for discipline to happen, it needs a purpose or a very clear intention, and also it needs a time frame, right? Can you be disciplined forever?
I would say so. Now you're asking a question about sustainability, though, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
And not a question about definition. If someone is able to maintain discipline their whole life, then, you know, all the power to them. But that, or in a certain context, if I don't think that time frame. I think the time frame is only limited insofar as you're able to maintain it. I don't think it applies to the definition of.
I think you need a time frame, because if you don't have a time frame, you can't really measure discipline. Except it is a, you know, if you say it's a one-time thing, I'll do this tomorrow, and then you disciplined yourself, you did it. Or if it's a week thing, I'll do this every day for 7 days straight. Or with I think what we just mentioned, you can be disciplined forever if you say I'm gonna, I don't know, any dumb example, I'm gonna brush my teeth every morning for every day until the day I die. Then yeah, like you can say that happened if you actually did it. If you measure it, then the day you died, you'll be like, oh, I did it, this is happening, and I achieved that. But I guess what I'm trying to say, it is also like a goal. Like you need to set some sort of measurable time frame so that you can know the outcome, right? Or maybe not. Maybe.
But discipline.
We did say there should be an outcome to discipline. Like.
What about it just in its ability to be compared to its opposite? So if, let's say that discipline is discipline because you are using will and directing your efforts, and you don't need a time frame to say like, oh, I succeeded, but all you need is to say, what was I going to do if I didn't make these changes today or yesterday? Or so discipline is something to compare. Discipline is something that you are utilizing or you have when you are orienting your action using will towards something you wouldn't normally have done if you just gave in to automatic lifestyle or automatic reactive living. So in that sense, I don't think it necessarily needs a time frame, but I do agree that there's no point to utilizing discipline without understanding what the outcome or why or what it's for. You kind of need a what it's for, but I don't know if you need it for the definition, because you could be disciplined. Someone could be disciplined in that they get up every day and they make a 70-meter high pile of playing cards. That's so tall. So let's say 3 meters, 3 meters high. They make a massive pile of playing cards.
Yeah.
And they're disciplined. They do it every day, and they don't want to. Someone asked them, like, he's like, I just want to go swimming, but I got to make this pile of playing cards. And you're like, wow, this is taking discipline for you to make these playing cards every day.
Every day, right.
But they could not have a... it's a time frame, but they could not have a reason or an outcome. They could not say, I want to make this pile of playing cards for a week. They could just be doing it every day, and they're using discipline every day to make these cards. And you can ask them, they can say, I just want to sleep in, but I gotta make this pile
every day. Yeah. But that's both a goal and a time frame. Right? Make the pile of cards every day.
Yeah. What if they don't? What if they don't say I've got to make this pile every day? What if they just do it?
Yeah, what? So I would love to explore that scenario. What would be a good example of um, successful discipline without a goal or a time frame?
That's what I'm trying to look for, because if we can poke a hole in that being a part of the definition, then it's not a definition.
Exactly. Yeah, but I don't
So
think
I'm
it
trying.
can be done. How do
Yeah.
you define discipline without either getting to do something or abstaining to not do something for a specific
Well,
period of time, even if it's just today? I'm not
yeah.
gonna have that chocolate today. You can
Right.
have a chocolate tomorrow and you'll be disciplined if you didn't have it today.
But so what differentiates the enacting or the use of will to drive behavior in a moment?
Hmm.
What differentiates that from the notion of discipline? And is that discipline, or is that just
Free will?
free will, conscious action? You're thinking about what you're doing and you're
Yeah.
making choices. Um, but so I would say that currently maybe a definition is consistent, the use of will to drive action in a certain behavior consistently over time. Or they but it
Yeah, but I don't know if consistency is necessarily in the definition. You could play with consistency in your discipline journey, but I don't think it, because you could say, well, I don't know, you could say,
hashtag my discipline journey.
I'm gonna do X and Y once a month,
That's consistency.
and it could be a chaotic consistency because you
No, but
may not
that's
specify the exact date of the month.
yeah,
But if
but
you
that's
do it once a
consistency.
month, then
Yeah, but that's consistency.
right. And you could say once a month until I decide not to do it anymore or up the
Yeah.
dose or whatever. But you could also
Yeah.
say once a month for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
Then make it finite.
Mm-hmm. 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 Then that would be having a short term goal or a medium term goal, and then using discipline to reach
Mhm.
that goal. Discipline is part of the ingredients, is part of how you're succeeding in that goal, is your use of discipline. And discipline
Mhm.
is the continuing to use will to drive your action in a way that you wouldn't have normally done naturally, or if you were totally just living on instinct or flow. Because I think you could
Exactly,
say
yeah.
that the regular state of being is reactive, and your responses to things and your behavior is
Dude, I think you're raising a beautiful dilemma right now. Yeah. Okay.
I think that, just to finish, I think that your normal lifestyle or normal way of being is responding to stimulus as your nature and nurture has your genetics and your
Yeah.
environment has social conditioning have brought you to be, and you're responding in a kind of unconscious way. And as
Mhm.
much as you can, you try to be conscious and try to direct your behavior. But discipline necessitates the direction of that using will in a purposeful way, and
Mhm.
results in something different to that if you were just naturally flowing in your instinctual. If we grant the idea that our natural way of being is instinctual and non-directed,
Yeah, so you're
or has
just
a higher
acting out
propensity to that.
whatever it is that you're currently, quote unquote, programmed to act
Exactly.
out, and you just go through the process and through your current habits without even questioning why, or even trying to change them, or
Right.
just living. And
Yeah.
in order for discipline to occur, you need to have some sort of objective that is opposite to your current state. It brings an uncomfortable situation. You have to suffer through it. You have to push yourself to do it. You have to almost generate some sort of psychological strength. Or I guess it could be called motivation, but that's also a different variable that could take place. Like we also have mentioned that discipline is easy when you're motivated, right? But it's when you really don't want to do it, when it either shines or
but if it's easy,
breaks you or makes you. Yeah.
If it's easy, is it discipline?
If it's easy, if is easy natural and organic to whatever it is that you're doing, then I don't think so. It needs to be. It needs to deal with your current limitations. I guess.
So discipline is like the designed frequency of, let's say, train on a train track, and you're flipping the thing that puts the train on a different direction at a fork. It goes one way as opposed to going the other way. Let's say the way it was normally going to go was the path of least resistance, which would have been your regular mode of being or your instinctual living, or however you want to put it.
Yeah.
And the train track switch takes effort. It takes a lot of energy to move the metal that's going to divert the train to go to a different direction. And so that's discipline, is the decision to, I'm going to flip this track, and that's part of the practice. I'm using that decisive factor to point myself in a direction that I decided I want to go, and
doing it anyway,
and doing it, and
just doing it,
and
even though resistance is very, very high.
Yeah, and that's what's hard. It's easy to let the train go where it was going to go anyway. In the same way, it's easy for you to just live whatever happens without.
So here's another dilemma that I think we could get into, and it's not at all far from what we're currently exploring, right? So if we say that the opposite from discipline, or the standing point of discipline, is your current mode of being. Maybe you're in a plateau, you're in some sort of hole, and you're very weak in your physical body, you're very weak emotionally and psychologically, and you decide to adopt a new habit that is gonna be very difficult to execute every day, or once a week, or once a month, whatever objective you decide to pursue. And it could be abstract, or it could be extremely clear, but you're gonna have to push yourself, right? What if, instead of trying to transform your personal will into some sort of superhuman monster that just executes everything no matter how you're feeling, what if you could just adopt a super conscious mode of being and just really think about what you're doing and saying in a very intense way all the time? Maybe that's some sort of easier hack into executing things that are hard, not from pushing yourself out of will or forcing yourself to do something even though your whole reality is telling you not to do it. Maybe through, I don't know how to explain it, because it's not necessarily rationality, like really thinking about the consequences of your actions and thinking about your future instead of your present, like delaying gratification and all of that stuff. Maybe it's not a rational thing. Maybe it comes from a mindful mind, a meditative mind, where you're just really making decisions out of pure self-love, a state of self-love or something like that. What do you think?
I agree. I think this is an interesting avenue to go down. I think we're getting a little bit away from the definition of discipline, and I'm totally fine with that because this is, in my mind, a more interesting conversation.
Okay, and we can come back to discipline
We
and
can
round
come
it
back.
up at the end.
We can come back to that as well. I just wanted to bring up also the potential for when you're in a state of flow, you are in a mode of almost instinct. And so discipline, as we've defined it, is almost contradictory to what I conceptualize as the idea of flow. And last time we talked, we felt that there was some form of relationship or correlation or something about them both being somewhat related to each other and how they function.
Yeah.
But I agree that cultivating one's ability to be conscious at all times, cultivating your ability to maximize to maximize the average time per day that you're fully conscious and aware and responding totally in a non-instinctual way, that I would say is the best path forward, I would say, or that sounds like a better life than living unaware and then imposing a sort of discipline upon a small range of behavior, like disciplining yourself, and then when you've forced that discipline, oh my God, it's so hard, now I didn't want to do this and I forced myself and I did it, and then relax and release and back to instinct, and then but then I'll also decide to add in this pursuit and incorporate discipline, and then you're kind of generating these pockets within your life where you jump into hyper discipline and enacting will, and probably takes force, and it's uncomfortable, and then you're just accepting that, okay, I did that, so releasing back into almost unconscious. If we accept the premise that is on average kind of where we tend to exist, which I would say we do.
Yeah. Also, if we accept the premise that discipline takes some sort of force, or as you put it, enact will, right? So you have to do it without a natural inclination to the action.
I would say that force may be too harsh of a word, but in the metaphor of the train, I guess it's just you're directing energy towards something that there wasn't going to be energy directed towards. You were just going to let it do. You were going to let yourself. The train was going to go there. No energy would have been at that intersection. It would have been just continue there. So there's an input of energy to redirect and to sometimes, get the train moving. Sometimes the train isn't even moving if we expand this metaphor.
Sure, yeah. And sometimes it feels like it's going against the direction it should be going.
Yeah, sometimes you have to try to reverse a train.
Worst. So that makes me think about, how a main characteristic of mind is repetition. We could say that's one main aspect of how the psyche works, through repetition. And I know that's very abstract, but I'm just thinking, if what your mind is currently repeating back to you every day, every second of the day, suddenly goes against what, like, a new paradigm you're trying to get into, or a
Sure.
new life you're trying to manifest, or whatever, you really do need discipline, and you need some kind of force to force a new repetition into the currently programmed repetition. And that could even be like way more intense repetition until the new repetition just settles as a new normal. But in the beginning, in the first few months of that process, or even years, you're going to have resistance because it's a different repetition process, and you're trying to replace that. So maybe force is right.
The one thing I've thought of about this that makes has the potential to make me feel discouraged about new habits or thought patterns or anything like that is I think about, and I don't know if this is true, maybe there's some sort of exponential or frequency thing that, or input maxput thing that maybe, I haven't conceptualized or considered. But I feel like if you think about a certain way you think, or a behavior you have, or a habit you have, however many years your age is, basically, that's how long you've made that groove deeper. So if you're going to make a new one, it's not so much that you need to let that one minimize. You need to make a groove that's deeper than that one. And so in my mind, that could take the extent to which you've already built that other one. So an equal amount of years almost, or one could say an equal amount of executing that thought pattern. And
At least.
And I mean, that can't be real, because people develop new habits and they make changes, so that's not true, but it makes sense. Like, I don't know. Right. I'm saying it's not true, but it makes sense, and that's kind of just where I'm at right now with that kind of idea.
So maybe it's a both and situation. Just like you can light up a light bulb with a switch or with a dimmer. You can make it constant change, or you can make it on and off. So maybe if you try with really gentle tools, it'll take longer. But maybe there are some other tools that facilitate mental change in a much more rapid way.
A recent example of this could be, there's got to be a better example. But I was thinking there was some sort of recent Wim Hof study where they brought in mindfulness meditators, and there was more connection between brain hemispheres and parts of the brain from somebody who did, say, a sequence of the Wim Hof breathing. They found a higher activity between hemispheres and between parts of the brain than the person who had committed like hours of meditation a day for decades. So there are tools that we know of, I guess, and this is kind of unrelated, but things that potentially may exponentially get you to a desired outcome. Then maybe you've naturally generated it out of instinct. But that's a temporary state, and that's something that I haven't fully investigated, and that's not really related to what we're talking about. All that was the reason I brought that up was to consider that there are instances where certain phenomena or outcomes can be reached in a short period of time when considering different methods or approaches, and that's all the concept.
Yeah. So would you say meditation is a more gentle and slow tool than,
well, I would say
example,
it depends on what the tool is for.
I was thinking in intense tools or experiences, like maybe a near-death experience, or a plant medicine, or in a less fancy term, just psychedelic drug. experience. Some people have these experiences, and it could be substance induced, or it could be just a random experience, like a near-death accident or a dream. But these experiences have very profound effects on the brain, and sometimes it's within seconds. With people that smoke DMT, for example, they have very profound experiences in 10, 15 seconds, and some people claim they really, for example, they stop smoking really easily, like no effort process. Like there's these testimonials out there. I'm not saying you want to quit smoking, just smoke DMT. I'm not saying that, but
there's hypnotists that for a long time also have claimed to do the same thing, and people have and whether or not it's real or not, people have had results based on that notion. But I would say that's almost an avoidance of discipline, I would say. That's looking for a shortcut. These are thinking about not shortcuts, but if we meander back towards the topic of discipline.
I like the shortcut idea instead of tool, because it really makes me think that, you have to go through the process. You can't skip the process.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you would like something to be sustainable, but then there are instances where sustainable change has occurred from a temporary or very limited time frame from an experience that occurred in a very limited duration of time. But
yes.
Do you want to talk about flow? Do you want to look up the definition of discipline right now?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
I'm just going to Google. I'm just going to discipline. What is this and where is it from?
So I'm going to go to Merriam-Webster.
Okay, this is from Oxford. The Google results comes from Oxford. So I'll say, so discipline is a noun. It's the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience.
Whoa. Yeah, like punish a student. Like,
and two, a branch of knowledge typically one studied in higher education. We're not talking about that. Like the discipline of, we're not talking about that.
Okay.
So it's mainly I'll say it again. This is the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience. Whoa,
so basically training people to enforce your will onto them out of violence.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than we were. I mean, I would say the only thing that's similar is if you take out of training people, I guess you could say that's yourself, so you could keep that in. The practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior, we're kind of talking about that. I mean, you're setting guidelines, you're saying these are things that I want to enact, and then you're training yourself to obey or to enact that code or that sequence of behaviors. The only thing we didn't incorporate is using punishment to correct your disobedience.
Yeah, also I didn't think we mentioned it being a practice or some sort of what's the first word they're using there?
That almost goes along with you saying that you have a disciplined journey.
Exactly.
It's a practice. It's like a practice. Yeah.
I don't think it becomes easier over time.
I don't think.
The habit will, but
that's
not discipline.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was
so
flailing around.
Merriam-Webster is saying control.
Hold on, is this Merriam or Webster?
Merriam-Webster.
I'm just kidding.
It's both of them at the same time.
Wow.
Control gained by enforcing obedience or order. So you enforce obedience and then you gain control. That's 1A, and I got 1B, which is a prescribed conduct or pattern of behavior.
Oh, nice. That's closest to what we were talking about.
And then I got self-control, which is 1C, And then the second definition is just punishment. It links back to the word punishment.
Right. So one, was it 1B and C? We're kind of talking about that.
1B is prescribed, pattern of behavior or self-control.
And 1C, self-control. Yeah. Self-control, I think, is the train thing. That's just you being conscious and deciding to alter your behavior that results in a different behavior than that which would have occurred if you just ran on instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that plays a role even if you're trying to get into a flow state or just try to live more consciously and then, enact healthy actions out of natural intuition, which is organic and it's not enforced. Maybe you can get there, but it will take some discipline in the beginning because you need to change what's programmed.
Okay, so this is interesting. Now we're discussing, I like how the word intuition is very interesting.
Okay.
Intuition, would you say, is almost a conscious awareness of your instinct? Maybe I'm wrong.
Dude, I think I like that.
Maybe I'm wrong, but it's like if you're living consciously and you're aware of what's happening in your life and you're not just purely living totally identified with your ego and not really being aware of your instinctual decisions and patterns, so on and so forth. If you're living slightly separate, a slight step back, a little bit higher perspective, then you can notice like, oh, my instinct would be this, or this is causing me to want to react in this way. And so that's almost like that what intuition is you noticing what the instinct what you would have done if you were just blind and just going along.
Right. First so noticing it and then making a decision that is not purely based on instinct.
That's what I'm saying. So
right, yeah.
It's in the this would be my instinct. I can totally flow with it because you could consider it to be somewhat an intuition, perhaps, if we want to go along with that definition. But you also have the ability to say no, rather this.
But maybe that's instinct.
Redirect.
So maybe the difference between intuition and instinct is that intuition is always there. That's the default operating mode. And then instinct is a little bit reactive. Like, I did it out of instinct. It's reactive. You don't even think about it. That instinct. Right.
And then I would say that's the default mode, though.
Sorry, what was that?
You just mentioned that intuition is default mode, but I think instinct is default mode.
I meant instinct. You're right. I meant instinct. And then intuition would be reflective. Like if instinct is reactive, intuition is reflective. And it takes a step backwards. It takes
it's being aware of what the instinct would have been.
Right, noticing the patterns.
Right, yeah. That's very interesting. I think that's interesting. Yeah.
So maybe that's it. Maybe it takes discipline to shift from instinct to intuition. But once you're in intuition mode or close to it, some tasks won't need so much will or discipline or enforced behavior, maybe.
I don't think it's totally... So now that I'm thinking about intuition, I also think there's an element that intuition implies almost like a faith based on your feeling.
Yeah, it's
like we tend to
emotion.
We tend to think about like if someone makes a decision based on intuition, it's like it felt like the right thing to do.
Felt right, yeah.
It felt right. Yeah, it's about feelings. Where I don't think we're just talking about that. We're talking about if let's say you notice your instinct, and in the act of noticing, it becomes an intuition because you're noticing what feeling something is making you have but not necessarily reacting to it blindly.
Yeah.
And then in the considering values, goals, the direction you would like to steer your train, you decide whether to follow or to not follow or to redirect. And in the continuous redirection of a certain thing comes discipline. That's where discipline is working, is in the continuous.
Yeah.
Because if you just do something, I think it's in the repetition, and this is I didn't see this in the definitions, I don't think, that we read, but I really feel like there's a repetitive nature to it within a certain you're talking about a certain thing when you're saying you're disciplining yourself. Because if you just make a conscious decision about something, it's like good for you. You just, I don't know, in that one moment you just had more will or something and you made a good decision. It's like, that's not discipline. That's, you made a good decision. Discipline is in that exact thing that happened there, continuing to make that good decision over and over again. And that takes discipline. Maybe.
So I think that's the third definition that I didn't get into here. It says,
I like it when I say something with so much conviction and then at the end I say maybe. I don't know. That happens so much.
Sometimes that's all you can actually say, maybe.
I know, maybe
is beautiful. So this is saying training that corrects, molds, or perfects the mental faculties or moral character.
Wow, so now it's bringing in morality.
It's bringing in morality, and it's bringing in a sense of correction of your mental faculties.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about that.
That's heavy.
I think that kind of aligns a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's say that your mental faculties, when they're not, what is the first word? Perfecting, correcting. Let's say when your mental faculties are uncorrected, let's use that terminology, then you're running on instinct. And when they're corrected, you've considered things and you've redirected. And that would be the correction of your mental faculties. I don't know, maybe that's not.
Yeah, sure. But it's also an ongoing process, I think, if we're talking about now, about character and a sense of morality. Because it's not also it's not only switching from instinct mode to intuition mode. It's also constantly growing your sense of a bigger picture, a higher perspective, taking more variables into account for problems you might encounter, like just constantly growing your sense of understanding of reality to a point where you can always make wiser decisions. And that's a constant thing that you could also be trying to achieve, like an ideal that you'll never achieve, but just pursuing that ideal it's what it's all about.
It's about chipping away on the whole in general towards something ideal for yourself. And as you mentioned, like thinking and making decisions from a standpoint of not. I just wanted to bring up also that if your natural mode of being is to overthink things naturally and to avoid action, then discipline would be in the reducing of duration that you spend considering variables and contemplating and pontificating and
okay.
I think it's in. So I believe it's in your ideal. It's in what you're heading towards, and that will determine how the discipline looks. Some people it might be an under conceptualization of variables and acting without consideration of consequences. And then for other people, it might be hyper or over-analyzation and spending too much time thinking. And then for them, discipline would be for redirecting their ship towards action. And an action increased action, especially within a specific domain.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
all of those things, the commonality between all of those things will be how is this train heading towards your metaphysical ideal or your conceptualization of an ideal? And that will determine where your discipline will need to rear its head when it comes to putting energy in towards directing the train. What do you think?
So I think we're now also playing with the idea of, is rationality interfering with a sense of acting from intuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're overthinking, overanalyzing, trying to contemplate as many variables as possible before every decision, maybe that's not the wisest thing to do. So I think there's a balance issue, because also, I mean, I don't think you can actually say that before making a decision of whether to do or not do something, you can make a claim that every decision should happen in the benefit of yourself and others. So it's not always obvious what that decision is, but generally speaking, if that decision is going to harm either yourself or others, don't do it. If it's going to be beneficial to yourself and others, it's probably wise to do it. And so,
however, there's always going to be trade-offs. There's always going to be trade-offs.
Right. Mm-hmm. And trade-off could also be, you don't lose time over analyzing everything, trying to arrive to what your rational mind thinks is the correct or the wisest decision. Sometimes,
unless your value is in someone's ability to contemplate every single variable within if
that's where you shine,
circumstance,
then exploit it.
If that's your goal, is to be the best or the most proficient in your mind at analyzing every single variable you can possibly consider, then your discipline would be in maintaining the amount of time that you consider variables and explore those conceptions. So it's in what you value, and it's in where you're trying to get. That discipline will be applied to its specific uses.
So you could say you have a very disciplined intellect or a very disciplined train of thought, because you don't take shortcuts. You really take time to think through things, to do your research, to learn the references and the bibliography, and explore different authors that are exploring the same themes. And maybe that's what a disciplined intellectual actually does.
I think the acceptance of discipline includes a rejection of shortcuts.
Yeah.
I think
Reject shortcuts. Don't cheat.
Or not rejecting shortcuts, because that implies that you're not going to implement new strategies,
tools or hacks.
Right. I think what I mean is reject the assumption that shortcuts will get you there.
Yeah.
A rejection that discipline, you know what I mean.
If external substance or external experience or external mind, which could be some, like watching some motivation video so that some other guy yells at you and now you do it out of like feeling sorry for yourself or whatever.
Right.
That's replacing your motivation work with some external thing that's doing it for you.
Right. And also, I think there's a tendency for that there's like recreational motivation, I think, where people like...
There's a lot of that, like motivation.
Just recreationally being like, oh, I feel motivated, but there's no direction. I just want it to feel like hype, or I just want it to feel like I can do it, whatever the it is. And
Yeah.
there isn't even an it usually. It's just
A hyped mental state.
a hyped mental state.
It probably produces a lot of
A
beautiful
false sense
chemicals.
of capability almost.
A false sense of capability. But it triggers beautiful chemicals in the brain probably. And so
Sure,
it
I
also
bet,
creates
yeah.
a chemical addiction to, I don't know. You watch this very hyped speaker with millions of followers.
It's just like a short-term sense of we're going to make it.
Yeah, optimism.
It's
Fake optimism.
Yeah.
I'm all for optimism, but it has to be grounded on reality. And other people are not in your same reality. It's just maybe sometimes
however,
different though.
That's a whole discussion though, because I think that ties into our discussion about faith and into believing and accepting things that will have a positive impact on your life, even if you can't 100% prove, so to speak, or quantify, or because I think that speaks on the same thing of optimism based on faith too, which doesn't necessarily require hyper realistic or things obviously should be within the realm of possibility.
But sometimes that's not as easy to define. What's 100%. The realm of possibility?
It's in the definition of exactly.
Like, self-awareness is hard to get. It's hard to explore.
You can't predict. 2 years ago, you couldn't have said, "Oh, in 2020, in 2020, I'm going to do the best sequence of restaurant reviews and sit in their restaurants, and I'm going to achieve that." And then 2020 comes and there's a lockdown, and then you're like, okay, well, I didn't know that was in the realm of possibility. There's always things that occur that are outside the realm of what you thought was a possibility. Can't predict everything.
Everyone's so different. Like, I don't know, this fake guru is telling everyone, you can make it. Just do what I say and you'll make it. It is possible. Just trust in yourself, you'll make it. It doesn't really take into account that, to be honest, some people don't make it. Some people can't make it out of lack of opportunity, lack of talent, lack of intelligence, lack of will and discipline. I guess.
I have two questions for you. One, what is it? What differentiates a fake from a real guru? And two,
oh my god.
and two, how, and two, what's the benefit of telling people they can't make it? And are they not helped from at least a sense of positivity that might get them closer than they would have otherwise?
So I think a real guru,
and maybe this is a new wave,
could be anyone who just does whatever anything at all.
Okay.
Someone who does anything at all that helps bring more clarity into anyone's life. And that actually has to do with the literal definition of guru in Sanskrit, which is going from darkness to light, going from chaos to order, going from confusion to clarity. And
if you agree that that involves a type of learning, or learning something from somebody, or learning a lesson, or gaining some kind of insight that allows you to head closer towards what you might conceptualize as lightness or a metaphysical ideal, then that person or that thing, even to you in that moment, would have been a guru. Is that?
Yeah. That just made me think about, I don't know if you knew this, but I encountered disinformation like a week ago. And apparently when Paramahansa Yogananda died, the guy that wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, he's also got a very big documentary on him. It's called Awake. when that guy died, people kept his body under surveillance for months.
Whoa.
And for months, I don't have the accurate information. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I might say some not very specific fact, but it is a fact that there is a document, like a signed document from a general or a colonel, some military guy, who witnessed that the body of Paramahansa Yogananda didn't show any sign of putrefaction or cells dying or any sort of like mold or something like that, which was some kind of like
decay.
Thank you, that's the word I was looking for. Decay. No sign of decay for months. I don't know, that made me think that, you know, there's this testimony of it could be fake, though. Obviously it could be fake.
Of course.
You're saying of course it's fake?
Of course.
Oh my god. Okay.
Of course.
I'll take your word for it. Do some further research, but maybe you can talk about this some other time.
Of course.
It is fun to explore, though.
Of course.
There's a big story around it, and
the consideration of an anomaly that defies the laws of physics would be so extraordinary so as to necessitate the rewriting of the laws of physics. And I don't think that that's occurred in the context of, I mean, what was fueling those cells to not die? He wasn't eating.
Right, so all you can say is maybe. For whatever
Why do you bring this
theory
up?
you come up with, you could say, well, maybe. Right? Like, 'cause nobody knows. And we don't know if this claim is legit or not. But all I'm saying is, best case scenario, they probably just made the rumor up to hype the brand and hype the guru.
Of course.
The guru status. Yeah.
Yeah, and respect. If you worship this person for so long, you expect him to just die like a normal person? No, that hurts your entire concept of people being able to reach a status of holiness or enlightenment or some non-human degree of elevation. And if you devote your whole life to that, you better hope that this person doesn't look like a normal human when they die and they just
So I would say that's a fake guru then. Anyone who hypes his personality or life story and lies to people to gain themselves a higher status of a teacher or a master of any sort, that's a fake guru. And everyone who's like
I would like to talk about this as
well.
I would like to talk about this as well because...
And maybe we can talk about coaching as well, because I think that's like the fake guru revolution right now going on.
I think these are great potential waves to pick up on. I think we started this convo thinking about the discussion of discipline in the context of flow, and we didn't quite reach it, which is great because it means we found a lot of content around discipline, and I feel like we only scratched the surface in terms of application, definition, and conceptualizing its use. I guess that's application. But I think I think I like thinking about the concept of instinctual living, and that by consciously being aware of how you might have responded to things, that could be considered mindfulness and noting. In that you're noticing intuition, or what you would have felt like doing, what would have felt right in the moment would have been instinctual if you were not aware of what that action would have been. And and the concept of discipline as the repetitive enacting of will directed towards an alteration of your instinctual behavior towards something more conscious and defined as direct that would direct you towards an ideal that you've decided to orient yourself towards.
Yeah.
And
Totally, man.
that's what I'll continue to think about. Yeah.
Just to recap on my end, it was a breakthrough for me to present the alternate idea of a consciousness state of being as an alternative, or as a way to skip
I love
discipline.
that. Yeah.
But then I think we ended up in the understanding that doing that, like reaching that state of intuition or consciousness-based decision making, that takes discipline to achieve. Like, you still have to deal with discipline and your own enactment of will,
right,
to put yourself in that new paradigm.
I think you can't avoid discipline when you're trying to steer yourself away from what normally would have been instinctual. However, I do think I definitely got a lot from considering that conceptualization of just conscious living in the way that you framed it, I think is really beautiful. And I think that if you consider certain things in that way, I think it avoids, I think, what could be a pitfall of just focusing on discipline, which would be hard enacting of will, using a lot of energy, doing something, and then just allowing yourself to fall or dissolve back into instinct and because it's very easy to focus discipline towards a very specific domain or a specific action or a specific thing, and not consider it as an element of a conscious way of being and perceiving and acting, to integrate discipline within that in a flowing, ongoing way, and not in sort of an acute, temporary hijacking moment.
And we mentioned pattern recognition, and we mentioned being aware of repetition and how that affects everything you do.
Yes.
And I think I really like those concepts because I have a slight, I don't know, I have a trouble accepting the idea that that there's levels of consciousness. Like, you can be more conscious than the other guy. I think we're all just experiencing consciousness. And you can't, I don't know, maybe this
I would like to talk about that.
Another wave, but
for sure.
I don't buy that you can be more conscious than someone else.
And I think that's in your definition of, I think that's in your definition of being more conscious.
Okay.
But and we can totally get into this. I think that's a big wave.
It is.
Because there are ways or modes of being or perceptual vantage points that I would say, in my mind, I would consider to be, quote unquote, being more conscious or aware in that moment from that vantage point. But I do agree that consciousness is okay. Well, yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how you define it. But awareness is closer to being in a state of focus and noticing the things as they go.
This is great. We'll get into this.
We will. Okay. Nice.
This has been a great convo on discipline, almost
beautiful
entirely.
Convo, man. Fun.
And I still would like to get into flow sometime and how this integrates, or how this might relate, or how discipline might relate to flow.
It's super related. So I think this is great waves that are encountering each other, and
they are
explore them.
Well, thanks for the convo.
Thank you for the kung fu. There was some great kung fu exchanging of
thanks for the great ideas. Kung fu, my friend. And I'll talk to Fu soon.
Talk to you in the next one, bro. All right, peace.